Just months after surviving a vote of no confidence in Parliament, UK Prime Minister Theresa May's time at Downing Street is coming to an end.
She and I will meet to agree a timetable for the election of a new leader of the Conservative Party.
The announcement comes ahead of a fourth vote on May's Brexit deal next month. Regardless of the result, Conservatives say they'll be choosing a new leader. May became Prime Minister in 2016, replacing David Cameron, who resigned shortly after the UK voted in favour of leaving the European Union. She spent much of her time in office negotiating with Brussels. The two sides agreed on divorce terms in November, and the plan was to leave in March. But 3 times the UK Parliament refused to sign off on May's deal. That's led to a Brexit delay that could last until October.
If Parliament had backed our Brexit deal, we could already have left the EU.
Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt, as well as Home Secretary Sajid Javid, are expected to be contenders for the job. They'll be up against Brexit campaigner and Britain's former chief diplomat, Boris Johnson.
I'm going to go for it. Of course, I'm going to go for it. I don't think that is any particular secret to anybody.
The path to a deal remains unclear. If he wins, Johnson says he plans to reopen talks with the EU, throwing out much of May's achievements. Cross-party talks with the opposition Labour Party have also collapsed, dimming hopes the current terms with Brussels will get through Parliament. Paolo Montecillo, TRT World.
Let's get more on the story now with Vicky Pryce in London. She's a board member at the Centre for Economics and Business Research. Welcome back to Money Talks, Vicky. Let's start with the collapse of those cross-party talks. What do you believe were the major sticking points that led to the breakdown of negotiations?
I don't think anyone really expected them to lead to anything much, I have to say. We were all sort of shaking our heads and waiting for when the announcement would be made that the talks had come to an end. But they had to be used as an excuse, in a way, of getting the extension that Theresa May had hoped to get from the Europeans. But in reality, I think issues such as the customs union, particularly the demands of Labour that if there is any agreement at all, we have to be in the UK part of a permanent customs union, which wouldn't change if there is a change of head of the Tory party, and of course there may well be one, there will be one pretty soon. That, I think, was the main area of disagreement, but frankly, as I said before, hardly anyone expected that Theresa May would give in on that, because of course that would split the Conservative Party, not just down the middle, but irrevocably, I think.
Yes, so explain to us what that permanent customs union arrangement would involve, because as you say, that's been one of the main demands from the Labour Party, but obviously some elements within the government are opposed to it. Explain to us what is that arrangement and why would some Brexiters be opposed to it?
Well, the main requirement of a customs union is that you have exactly the same tariffs with the external world as everyone else in the union has. So it's exactly as we are now, more or less. You may be talking about a customs union, but really we're talking about the customs union that exists right now. There is, of course, one with Turkey, but what it means is that, first of all, you don't have quite a lot of your service sector covered, which is a problem. But in addition to that, the most important thing for those who don't want to see the customs union be a permanent fixture is that it limits the ability of the country to have deals of its own with external members. So basically you're bound by what is agreed between the EU and other countries. Therefore, this whole idea, this whole selling of the Brexit concept as one that allows a completely independent trade policy for the UK outside the EU simply couldn't happen. And that, I think, was a step too far for many.
Yes, and now Theresa May says the deal will be presented in Parliament in the first week of June. She says she'll be presenting MPs with various options that she believes could command a majority of their votes when it does go to Parliament. What could those options possibly be?
one of the options that had been discussed before, she may not be presenting them, but that was what seemed to have attracted quite a lot of attention and a lot of backing, would be to move more or less along the lines of Norway. In other words, not only, well, actually being members of the single market, but adding customs union to it. That was one that was debated before by Parliament. There was also a debate about having another referendum. The question really is whether it makes any sense at all if she's going to be bringing back the withdrawal agreement, or at least the bill for it, in other words, the legislation, hoping to pass the legislation that would be required for a withdrawal agreement, even though the withdrawal agreement hasn't gone through yet. A very complicated issue, I have to say, for anyone listening or watching. But having those indicative votes would make no sense because we saw before that Parliament wasn't able to reach a majority on any of those that were put in front of them, and including, of course, the question of whether possibly to have a referendum on any deal that is coming forward in the future, except for one, which is that Parliament really did not want a no-deal scenario. So whoever comes and replaces Theresa May, it's likely to be a Brexiteer. The truth is that they will find it very difficult, if they can't renegotiate the withdrawal agreement with the EU, to go for a no-deal scenario. I think Parliament would revolt, because what they have shown very clearly is that that is the one option they don't want.
Okay, and as we heard in Paolo's story, under a lot of pressure from her own colleagues, Prime Minister Theresa May has agreed to set out a timeline for her resignation after this next vote on her Brexit deal in Parliament. If this deal fails, and it has already failed 3 times, as we also heard, do you think she'll resign?
Oh yes, I think she'll resign anyway. And we were already seeing all the potential sort of hopefuls, not all of them yet, but most of them putting their names forward. So the process has started. She has to go, and I think she will go pretty soon after the vote, if there is a vote. She might decide that she's not going to get the numbers. It has happened before that the vote was pulled, and I think there's still a very good chance that she's not going to put it through.
Interesting.
And then she'll resign.
That's right. Okay. Vicky Pryce in London, thank you for your analysis as always.